Welcome back to the Buddhist Bookshelf YouTube channel. In today's session, we embark on another chapter of our journey through the Sorrowless Flower, a profoundly insightful literary work crafted by Ngoc Tran, known as Dharma named Thien Phuc. This episode is particularly significant as it marks the 41st installment in this enlightening series, a testament to our shared commitment to deepening our understanding of Buddhist wisdom and philosophy. As we delve into the pages of this remarkable text, we invite you to join us in the exploration of timeless teachings that illuminate the path to inner peace and enlightenment. 557. The Buddha lands. The land or realm of a Buddha is the land of the Buddha's birth. The Buddha's land is also called the Buddhakstra or Buddha country. The term is absent from Hinayana. In Mahayana, it is spiritual realm acquired by one who reaches perfect enlightenment, where he instructs all beings born there, preparing them for enlightenment. There are many different Buddha lands in this 3,000 great thousand world, 3,000 great Chalai cosmos. First, the Western Pure Land, Sukhavati, name of the Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha in the West, the land of highest joy. Pure Land is a paradise without any defilements. For the sake of saving sentient beings, through innumerable asankhya, all Buddhas cultivated immeasurable good deeds and established a pure land to welcome all beings. Beings in this paradise strive to cultivate to attain Buddhahood. According to the Amitabha Sutra, the Buddha told Sariputra why this land is called ultimate bliss. It is called ultimate bliss because all beings in this land endure none of the sufferings but enjoy every bliss. Furthermore, this land is called ultimate bliss because it is surrounded by 7 tiers of railings, 7 layers of netting, and 7 rows of trees, all made of the 4 precious jewels. Moreover, the land of ultimate bliss has pools of 7 jewels, filled with waters of 8 meritorious virtues. The bottom of each of the pools is pure golden sand. On the 4 sides are stairs made of gold, silver, lapis lazuli, and crystal. Above the pools there are towers which are adorned with gold, silver, lapis lazuli, crystal, mother of pearl, red pearls, and carnelian. In the pools there are lotus flowers as big as cartwheels, blue ones shining with blue light, yellow ones shining with yellow light, red ones shining with red light, and white ones shining with white light, each emitting a subtle, wonderful, and pure fragrance. The land of ultimate bliss is complete with all these adornments and virtues. In that Buddha land there is always celestial music, and the ground is made of pure gold. Heavenly flowers reign in the 6 periods of the day and night. In the morning the sentient beings of this land fill their robes with multitudes of wondrous flowers, and make offerings to hundreds of billions of Buddhas in other worlds. At mealtime, they return to their own land, to eat and circumambulate the teaching assembly. Second, the pure land of all Buddhas in their Sambhogakaya. According to the Flower Adornment Sutra, the lotus door, or the lotus world, the pure land of Vairocana, also the pure land of all Buddhas in their Sambhogakaya, enjoyment bodies. Above the winter air circle is a sea of fragrant water, in which is the 1,000-petal lotus with its infinite variety of worlds, hence the meaning is the lotus which contains a store of myriads of worlds. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, the Buddha said, Ratna Rasi, all species of living beings are the Buddha land sought by all bodhisattvas. Why is it so? Because a bodhisattva wins the Buddha land according to the living beings converted by him to the Dharma, according to the living beings tamed by him, according to the country where they will be reborn to realize the Buddha wisdom, and in which they will grow the bodhisattva root. Why is it so? Because a bodhisattva wins the pure land solely for the benefit of all living beings. For instance, a man can build palaces and houses on vacant ground without difficulty, but he will fail if he attempts to build them in empty space. So, a bodhisattva, in order to bring living beings to perfection, seeks the Buddha land which cannot be sought in empty space. 558. 3 forms of knowledge. According to the Lankavatara Sutra, there are 3 forms of knowledge known as Spanhavalakshanatraya. The first of the 3 svabhavas is known as the parikalpita or wrong discrimination of judgment, and proceeds from rightly comprehending the nature of objects, internal as well as external, and also relationship existing between objects as independent individuals or as belonging to a genus. The second is the paratantra, literally, depending on another is a knowledge based on some fact, which is not, however, in correspondence with the real nature of existence. The characteristic feature of this knowledge is that it is not altogether a subjective creation produced out of pure nothingness, but it is a construction of some objective reality, on which it depends for material. Therefore, its definition is that which arises depending upon a support or basis. And it is due to this knowledge that all kinds of objects, external and internal, are recognized, and in these individuality and generality are distinguished. The paratantra is thus equivalent to what we nowadays call relative knowledge or relativity, while the parikalpita is the fabrication of one's own imagination or mind. In the dark, a man steps on something, and imagining it to be a snake is frightened. This is parikalpita, a wrong judgment or an imaginative construction. This is paratantra, relative knowledge. He does not know what the rope really is and thinks it to be a reality, individual or ultimate. While it may be difficult to distinguish sharply between the parikalpita and the paratantra from these brief statements or definitions, the latter seems to have at least a certain degree of truth as regards objects themselves, but the former implies not only an intellectual mistake, but some affective function set in motion, along with the wrong judgment. When an object is perceived as an object existing externally or internally and determinable under the categories of particularity and generality, the paratantra form of cognition takes place. Accepting this as real, the mind elaborates on it further both intellectually and effectively, and this is the parikalpita form of knowledge. It may be after all more confusing to apply our modern ways of thinking to the older ones, especially when these were actuated purely by religious requirements and not at all by any disinterested philosophical ones. The third form of knowledge is the parinishpanna, perfected knowledge, and corresponds to the right knowledge, samyujnana, and suchness, tathata, of the five dharmas. It is the knowledge that is available when we reach the state of self-realization, by going beyond names and appearances and all forms of discrimination or judgment. It is suchness itself, it is the tathagata garbhahridaya, it is something indestructible. The rope is now perceived in its true perspective. It is not an object constructed out of causes and conditions and now lying before us as something external. From the absolutist's point of view, which is assumed by the Lankavatara, the rope is a reflection of our own mind, it has no objectivity apart from the latter, it is in this respect non-existent. But the mind out of which the whole world evolves is the object of the parinishpanna, perfectly attained knowledge. 559. Fivefold Dharma body refuge of the self-nature. According to the Jewel Platform Sutra, the sixth patriarch taught about the fivefold Dharma body refuge of the self-nature. The first is the morality refuge, which is simply your own mind when free from error, evil, jealousy, greed, hatred and hostility. The second is the concentration refuge, which is just your own mind which does not become confused when seeing the marks of all good and evil conditions. The third is the wisdom refuge, which is simply your own mind when it is unobstructed, and when it constantly uses wisdom to contemplate and illuminate the self-nature, when it does no evil, does good without becoming attached, and is respectful of superior, considerate of inferiors, and sympathetic towards orphans and widows. The fourth is the liberation refuge, which is simply your own mind independent of conditions, not thinking of good or evil, and free and unobstructed. The fifth is the refuge of knowledge and views, which is simply your own mind when it is independent of good and evil conditions, and when it does not dwell in emptiness or cling to stillness. You should then study this in detail, listen a great deal, recognize your original mind, and penetrate the true principle of all the Buddhas. You should welcome and be in harmony with living creatures, the unchanging true nature. Good knowing advisors, the incense of these refuges perfumes each of you within. Do not seek outside. 560. Emptiness. Emptiness or void, central notion of Buddhism, recognize that all composite things are empty, samskrita, impermanent, anitya, and void of an essence, anatam. That is to say, all phenomena lack an essence or self, are dependent upon causes and conditions, and so, lack inherent existence. Thus, a person is said to be empty of being a self because he is composed of parts that are constantly changing and entirely dependent upon causes and conditions. However, the concept of emptiness is viewed by Buddhists as a positive perspective on reality because it implies that everything is constantly changing and is thus open toward the future. If things possessed an unchanging essence, all beings would be stuck in their present situations, and real change would be impossible. Devout Buddhists should try to attain the realization of emptiness in order to develop the ability to detach on everything and utilize all the available time to practice the Buddha teachings. The more we practice the Buddha's teachings, the more we approach the attainment of wisdom, that is to say, the more we are able to reach the direct realization of emptiness, and we realize the emptiness of all things, the more we can reach the perfection of wisdom. The term sunyata, terminologically compounded of sunya meaning empty, void, or hollow, and an abstract suffix ta meaning ness. The term was extremely difficult to be translated into Chinese, however, we can translate into English as emptiness, voidness, or vacuity. The concept of this term was essentially both logical and dialectical. The difficulty in understanding this concept is due to its transcendental meaning in relation to the logical linguistic meaning, especially because the etymological tracing of its meaning, sunyata meaning vacuous or hollow within a shape of thing, provides no theoretical or practical addition to one's understanding of the concept. According to Dr. Harsh Narayan, sunyavada is complete and pure nihilism. Sunyata is a negativism which radically empties existence up to the last consequences of negation. The thinkers of Yogacara school describe sunyata as total nihilism. Dr. Radhakrishnan says that absolute seems to be immobile in its absoluteness. Dr. Murti views prajnaparamita as absolute itself and said, "The absolute is very often termed sunya, as it is devoid of all predicates." According to Chinese English Buddhist dictionary, the nature void, i.e., the immateriality of the nature of all things, is the basic meaning of sunyata. According to other Mahayana sutras, sunyata means the true nature of empirical reality. It is considered as beyond the negation or indescribable. The Buddha used a number of similes in the Nikayas to point out the unreality of dharmas of every kind, and it is these similes that have been later used with great effectiveness in Mahayana philosophical schools, especially of Chinese Buddhist thinkers. Emptiness implies non-obstruction like space or the void. It exists within many things, but never hinders or obstructs anything. Emptiness implies omnipresence like the void. It is ubiquitous. It embraces everything everywhere. Emptiness implies equality like the void. It is equal to all. It makes no discrimination anywhere. Emptiness implies vastness like the void. It is vast, broad and infinite. Emptiness implies formlessness or shapelessness like the void. It is without form or mark. Emptiness implies purity like the void. It is always pure without defilement. Emptiness implies motionlessness like the void. It is always at rest, rising above the processes of construction and destruction. Emptiness implies positive negation. It negates all that which has limits or ends. Emptiness implies the negation of negation. It negates all selfhood and destroys the clinging of emptiness. Emptiness implies unattainability or ungraspability, space or the void. It is not obtainable or graspable. At the beginning of Madhyamaka Sastra, Nagarjuna gives the fundamentals of his philosophy by means of 8 negations. There is neither origination nor cessation, neither permanence nor impermanence, neither unity nor diversity, neither coming in nor going out, in the law of pratityasamutpada, dependent origination. Essentially, there is only non-origination, which is equated with sunyata. Elsewhere he also states that pratityasamutpada is called sunyata. Here sunyata, referring as it does to non-origination, is in reality the middle path which avoids the 2 basic views of existence and non-existence. Sunyata is the relative existence of things, or a kind of relativity. So, according to the Madhyamaka, sunyata does not mean absolute non-being, but relative being. Emptiness implies the true nature of empirical reality, or what is the same, the form of true nature of all phenomena. This subject matter of Sunyata will cover all the questions concerning the Buddhist outlooks on life and world. Nagarjuna claims Sunyata is the true nature of empirical reality. With Sunyata, all is possible, without it, all is impossible. In the Prajnaparamita Sutra, Sunyata refers to the world of enlightenment, but it also stated that this world of enlightenment is not separate from the world of delusion. The world of illusion is identical with the world of enlightenment. Form is identical with void, and the world of enlightenment is identical with the world of illusion. Void is identical with form. The purpose of Sunyata refers to the objective of extinguishing linguistic proliferation and the efforts leading towards this objective. Sunyata corresponds to ultimate truth, namely, the state in which linguistic proliferation has been extinguished, and the meaning of Sunyata signifies all existent, relating to our everyday life in which Sunyata is an actual established fact. The term emptiness or Sunyata is mainly used as a means to achieve nirvana or salvation. Psychologically, Sunyata is detachment. The teaching of Sunyata is to empty the mind of cravings. Morally, this negation has a positive effect, namely, preventing one from doing evils and making one love oneself and others. It is to foster the virtue of compassion. Epistemologically, Sunyata is an unattached insight that truth is not absolutely true. It teaches that discursive knowledge does not provide true wisdom, and that enlightenment is the abandonment of conceptual thinking. Metaphysically, Sunyata means that all things are devoid of definite nature, characteristic and function, and that metaphysical views are unintelligible and should be discarded. Spiritually, Sunyata is freedom, nirvana or liberation from suffering of the world. Emptiness is not a theory, but a ladder that reaches out into the infinite. A ladder is not there to be discussed, but to be climbed. If one does not even take the first steps on it, it is no use to have the ladder. Thus, emptiness is a practical concept for cultivation, not a view for discussion. The only use of the emptiness is to help us get rid of this world and of the ignorance which binds us to it. It has only one meaning, which is to help us transcend the world through wisdom. According to the Kula Sunnata Sutta, the Buddha affirmed Ananda. Ananda, through abiding in the emptiness, I am now abiding in the complete abode or the fullness of transcendence. So, what is the emptiness from that the Buddha abides in the fullness of transcendence? It is nothing else but nirvana. It is empty of cankers of sense pleasure, becoming and ignorance. Therefore, in meditation, practitioners try to reduce or eliminate the amount of conscious contents until the mind is completely motionless and empty. The highest level of meditation, the ceasing of ideation and feeling, is often used as a stepping stone to realization of nirvana. The Buddha told Sariputra about emptiness as follows: in emptiness there are no form, no feelings, no perceptions, no actions, no consciousnesses, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, and no mind, no form, sound, odor, taste, touch or mind object, no I elements until we come to no elements of consciousnesses, no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance, no old age and death. And no extinction of old age and death, no truth of sufferings, no truth of cause of sufferings, of the cessation of sufferings or of the path. There is no knowledge and no attainment whatsoever. By reason of non-attachment, the bodhisattva dwelling in Prajnaparamita has no obstacles in his mind. Because there is no obstacle in his mind, he has no fear, and going far beyond all perverted view, all confusions and imaginations, this is a real nirvana. From the standpoint of the absolute, Sunyata means devoid of, or completely free of thought construct, devoid of plurality. In other words, Sunyata is applied to tattva signifies that it is inexpressible in human language, that is, not is, both is, and not is, neither is nor not is, no thought, category or predicative can be applied to it. It is transcendental to thought, it is free of plurality, that it is a whole which cannot be sundered into parts. The most striking feature of Madhyamaka philosophy is its ever-recurring use of sunya and sunyata. So central is this idea to the system that it is generally known as sunyavada, i.e., the philosophy that asserts sunya as the characterization of reality. Sunya is a most perplexing word in Buddhist philosophy. Non-Buddhists have interpreted it only as nihilism. But that is not what it means. Etymologically, it is derived from the root svi, which means to swell or to expand. Curiously enough, the word Brahman is derived from the root brh or brhm, which also means to swell or to expand. According to the Buddha's teaching on Sunya Tattva and the Sunya principle, the word Sunya seems to have been used in an ontological sense in most of Buddhist contexts. The implication of the etymological signification of the word does not seem to have been fully worked out. According to some scholars, the word Sunya has no ontological signification. It has only a soteriological suggestion. But the word Sunya has obviously been used also in an ontological sense, with an exiological overtone and soteriological background. In the ontological sense, Sunya is the void, which is also fullness. Because it is nothing in particular, it has the possibility of everything. It has been identified with nirvana, with the absolute, with supreme reality or paramartha, with reality or tattva. Sunyata is an abstract noun derived from sunya. It means deprivation and suggests fulfillment. The words sunya and sunyata will best be understood in connection with svabhava. Svabhava literally means own being. Chandra Kirti says that this word has been used in Buddhist philosophy in two ways. The essence or special property of a thing, e.g., heat is the svabhava or special property of fire. In this world, an attribute which always accompanies an object, never parts from it, that, not being indissolubly connected with anything else, is known as the svabhava, i.e., special property of that object, svabhava, own being, as the contrary of parabhava, other being. Chandra Kirti says, svabhava is the own being, the very nature of a thing. While Nagarjuna says, that is really svabhava, which is not brought about by anything else, unproduced, akritrima, that which is not dependent on, not relative to anything other than itself, non-contingent, unconditioned. The word sunya has to be understood from 2 points of view. First, from the point of view of phenomena or empirical reality, it means svabhava sunya, i.e. devoid of svabhava or independent, substantial reality of its own. Second, from the point of view of the absolute, it means prapanka sunya, i.e. devoid of prapanka or verbalization, thought construct and plurality. According to Buddhism, there is not a thing in the world which is unconditionally, absolutely real. Everything is related to, contingent upon, conditioned by something else. In reference to vyavahara or empirical reality, sunyata means devoidness of self-being, of unconditioned nature, nisvabhava. In other words, it connotes conditioned co-production or thoroughgoing relativity, pratyasamatpada. This idea is conveyed in another way by the term, derived name, upadhyaprijnapti, which means that the presence of a name does not mean the reality of the named. Chandra Kirti says a chariot is so named by taking into account its parts like wheel, etc. It does not mean that the chariot is something different in its own right, apart from its constituent parts. This is another instant of relativity. As relativity, sunyata also connotes the relative, non-absolute nature of specific views. Sunyata exposes the folly of accepting any absolute beginning or total cessation, and thus connotes taking things as they are, and avoiding the extremes is and is not, mityamapradipit. Over and above these views, there are other senses in which the word sunyata has been used in Madhyamaka philosophy. In reference to ultimate reality, paramartha, sunyata connotes the non-conceptual nature of the absolute. In reference to the practitioner, sunyata implies his attitude of skillfulness of non-clinging to the relative as the absolute or to the absolute as something specific, anpalamba. The Mahaprajna Paramita Sastra brings out another implication of this sunyata principle, the irrepressible longing for the real, beyond the passing show of mundane life. Sunyata is not merely a word of ontological signification. It has also an exiological implication. Since all empirical things are devoid of substantial reality, therefore they are worthless. It is because of our ignorance that we attach so much value to worldly things. Once sunyata is properly understood, the inordinate craving for such things will automatically disappear. Sunyata is not merely an intellectual concept. Its realization is a means in salvation. When rightly grasped, it leads to the negation of the multiplicity of the dharmas and of detachment from the passing show of the tempting things of life. Meditation on sunyata leads to transcendental wisdom, prajna, which brings about the emancipation of the practitioner from spiritual darkness. Nagarjuna puts the quintessence of his teachings about sunyata in the following verse. Emancipation is obtained by the dissolution of selfish deeds and passions. All selfish deeds and passions are by imaginative constructs which value worthless things as full of worth. The imaginative constructs, vikalpas, are born of activity of the mind ceases when sunyata, emptiness or hollowness of things is realized. Sunyata is used in Madhyamaka philosophy as a symbol of the inexpressible. In calling reality sunya, the Madhyamaka only means to say that it is inexpressible, avasya, and apalapya. In the very first verse of Madhyamaka Karita, Nagarjuna makes the standpoint of sunyavada luminously prominent. The standpoint consists of the 8 notions: beyond destruction, beyond production, beyond dissolution, beyond eternity, beyond oneness, beyond plurality, beyond ingress, beyond egress. 561. 18 forms of emptiness. According to Zen Master D.T. Suzuki in Essays in Zen Buddhism, Book 3, in Xuan Chuang's version of the Mahaprajnaparamita, 18 forms of emptiness are enumerated. First, the emptiness of the inner things, adhyatma sunyata. The inner things mean the 6 consciousnesses, vijnana. When they are said to be empty, our psychological activities have no ego soul behind them, as is commonly imagined by us. This is another way of upholding the doctrine of anatman or anatta. Second, the emptiness of the outer things, bahirta sunyata. The outer things are objects of the 6 consciousnesses, and their emptiness means that there are no self-governing substances behind them. As there is no Atman at the back of the psychological phenomena, so there is no Atman at the back of the external world. This is technically known as the egolessness of things. Primitive Buddhism taught the theory in Atman in us, but it was by the Mahayanists, it is said, that the theory was applied to external objects also. Third, the emptiness of inner and outer things, adhyatma bahirta sunyata. We generally distinguish between the inner and the outer, but since there is no reality in this distinction, it is here negated. The distinction is no more than a form of thought construction. The relation can be reversed at any moment. There is no permanent stability here. Change the position, and what is inner is outer, and what is outer is inner. This relativity is called here emptiness. Fourth, the emptiness of emptiness, sunyata sunyata. When things outside and inside are all declared empty, we are led to think that the idea of emptiness remains real, or that this alone is something objectively attainable. The emptiness of emptiness is designed to destroy this attachment. To maintain the idea of emptiness means to leave a speck of dust when all has been swept clean. Fifth, the emptiness of highest degree, paramartra. Emptiness of the highest degree, by which is meant ultimate reality or supreme wisdom. What is meant by great emptiness of ultimate reality, which is supreme wisdom? When the supreme wisdom is realized in our inner consciousness, it will then be found that all the theories, wrong ideas, and all the traces of beginningless memory are altogether wiped out and perfectly empty. This is another form of emptiness. The great emptiness means the unreality of space. Space was conceived in old days to be something objectively real, but this is regarded by the Mahayana as empty. Things in space are subject to the laws of birth and death, that is, governed by causation, as this all Buddhists recognize, but space itself is thought by them to be eternally there. The Mahayanists teach that this vast vacuity also has no objective reality, that the idea of space or extension is mere fiction. Sixth, the emptiness of the ultimate truth. The highest void or reality, paramartha sunyata, highest void, supreme void, the void beyond thought or discussion, the Mahayana nirvana, though it is also applied to Hinayana nirvana. A conception of the void, or that which is beyond the material, only attained by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The ultimate truth means the true being of all things, the state in which they truly are, apart from all forms of subjectivity. This is something not subject to destruction, not to be held up as this or that, to which nothing can be affixed. Therefore, this ultimate truth is empty. If real, it is one of those objects that are conditioned and chained to the law of causation. Nirvana is but another name. When nirvana has something attachable to it, it will no more be nirvana. It will be seen that emptiness is here used in somewhat different sense from the great emptiness, when objects inner or outer are declared empty. 7th, the emptiness of things created, Samskrita Sunyata. Samskrita means things that have come to existence owing to conditions of causation. In this sense they are created. To say that the Samskrita or empty is another way of saying that the world external as well as internal is empty. 8th, the emptiness of things uncreated, Asamskrita Sunyata. Space is that which gives no hindrance, and itself penetrates through any hindrance freely, and manifests no change. One of the Asamskrita dharmas, passive void or space. Asamskrita are things not subject to causation, such as space. Existence is sometimes divided into Samskrita and Asamskrita, sometimes into inner and outer, sometimes into the 5 skandhas, etc., according to points of view necessitated by course of reasoning. All these distinctions are, however, only relative and have no corresponding objectivity, and are, therefore, all empty. The Asamskrita exist because of their being contrasted to the Samskrita. When the latter have no reality, the former are also no more. They both are mere names, and empty. 9th, the ultimate emptiness. Atyanta Sunyata emphasizes the idea of all things being absolutely empty. Ultimate means absolute. The denial of objective reality to all things is here unconditionally upheld. The emptiness means practically the same thing. The room is swept clean by the aid of a broom. But when the broom is retained, it is not absolute emptiness. Neither the broom nor the sweeper should be retained in order to reach the idea of Atyanta Sunyata. As long as there is even on Dharma left, a thing or a person or a thought, there is a point of attachment from which a world of pluralities, and, therefore, of woes and sorrows, can be fabricated. Emptiness beyond every possible qualification, beyond an infinite chain of dependence, this is nirvana. 10th, the emptiness of limitlessness, Anavaragra Sunyata. Anavaragra Sunyata means when existence is said to be beginningless, people think that there is such a thing as beginninglessness, and cling to the idea. In order to do away with this attachment, its emptiness is pronounced. The human intellect oscillates between opposites. When the idea of a beginning is exploded, the idea of beginninglessness replaces it, while in truth these are merely relative. The great truth of Sunyata must be above those opposites, and yet not outside of them. Therefore, the Pratvaparamita takes pains to strike the middle way, and yet not to stand by it, for when this is done it ceases to be the middle way. The theory of emptiness is thus to be elucidated from every possible point of view. 11th, the emptiness of dispersion, Anavakara Sunyata. Anavakara Sunyata means there is nothing perfectly simple in this world. Everything is doomed to final decomposition. It seems to exist as a unit, to retain its form, to be itself, but there is nothing here that cannot be reduced to its component parts. It is sure to be dispersed. Things belonging to the world of thought may seem not to be subject to dissolution. But here change takes place in another form. Time works, no permanency prevails. The 4 skandhas, Vedana, Samjna, Samskara, and Vijnana, are also meant for ultimate dispersion and annihilation. They are in any way empty. 12th, the emptiness of primary nature, Prakriti Sunyata. Prakriti is what makes fire hot and water cold, it is the primary nature of each individual object. When it is declared to be empty, it means that there is no Atman in it, which constitutes its primary nature, and that the very idea of primary nature is an empty one. That there is no individual selfhood at the back of what we consider a particular object has already been noted, because all things are products of various causes and conditions, and there is nothing that can be called an independent, solitary, self-originating primary nature. All is ultimately empty, and if there is such a thing as primary nature, it cannot be otherwise than empty. 13th, the emptiness of selfhood, Svalakshana Sunyata. What is meant by emptiness of appearance? Existence is characterized by mutual dependence. Individuality and generality are empty when one is regarded apart from the other. When things are analyzed to the last degree, they are to be comprehended as not existent. There are, after all, no aspects of individuation such as this, that, or both. There are no ultimate irreducible marks of differentiation. For this reason, it is said that self-appearance is empty. By this is meant that appearance is not a final fact. Lakshana is the intelligible aspect of each individual object. In some cases, lakshana is not distinguishable from primary nature, they are inseparably related. The nature of fire is intelligible through its heat, that of water through its coolness. The Buddhist monk finds his primary nature in his observance of the rules of morality, while the shaven head and patched robe are his characteristic appearance. Prajnaparamita tells us that these outside, perceptible aspects of things are empty, because they are mere appearances resulting from various combinations of causes and conditions. Being relative, they have no reality. By the emptiness of self-aspect or self-character, svalakshana, therefore, is meant that each particular object has no permanent and irreducible characteristics to be known as its own. 14th, the emptiness of things, sarvadharma sunyata. The assertion that all things, sarvadharma, are empty is the most comprehensive one, for the term dharma denotes not only an object of sense, but also an object of thought. When all these are declared empty, no further detailed commentaries are needed. But the Prajnaparamita evidently designs to leave no stone unturned, in order to impress its students in a most thoroughgoing manner with the doctrine of emptiness. According to Nagarjuna, all dharmas are endowed with these characters: existentiality, intelligibility, perceptibility, objectivity, efficiency, causality, dependence, mutuality, duality, multiplicity, generality, individuality, etc. But all these characterizations have no permanence, no stability, they are all relative and phenomenal. The ignorant fail to see into the true nature of things, and become attached thereby to the idea of a reality which is eternal, blissful, self-governing, and devoid of defilements. To be wise simply means to be free from these false views, for there is nothing in them to be taken hold of as not empty. 15th, the emptiness of unattainability, anupalambha sunyata. This kind of emptiness is known as unattainable, anupamabha. It is not that the mind is incapable of laying its hand on it, but that there is really nothing to be objectively comprehensible. Emptiness suggests nothingness, but when it is qualified as unattainable, it ceases to be merely negative. It is unattainable just because it cannot be an object of relative thought cherished by the Vijnana. When the latter is elevated to the higher plans of the prajna, the emptiness unattainable is understood. The Prajnaparamita is afraid of frightening away its followers when it makes its bold assertion that all is empty, and therefore it proceeds to add that the absence of all these ideas born of relativity does not mean bald emptiness, but simply an emptiness unattainable. With the wise, this emptiness is a reality. When the lion roars, the other animals are terrified, imagining this roaring to be something altogether extraordinary, something in a most specific sense attained by the king of beasts. But to the lion the roaring is nothing, nothing specifically acquired by or added to them. So with the wise, there is no emptiness in them which is to be regarded as specifically attained as an object of thought. Their attainment is really no attainment. 16th, the emptiness of non-being, abhava sunyata. Abhava is the negation of being, which is one sense of emptiness. 17th, the emptiness of self-nature, svabhava sunyata. What is meant by emptiness of self-nature, self-substance? It is because there is no birth of self-substance by itself. That is to say, individualization is the construction of our own mind. To think that there are in reality individual objects as such is an illusion. They have no self-substance, therefore, they are said to be empty. Svabhava means to be by itself, but there is no such being, it is also empty. Is then opposition of being and non-being real? No, it is also empty, because each term of the opposition is empty. 18th, the emptiness of the non-being of self-nature, abhava svabhava sunyata. 562. 4 classes in India at the time of the Buddha. The hierarchical structure of the Hindu old society resulted in oppression, suspicion, resentment and hostility. From there sprung opposition movements and hostility. This is why Buddhism had come out as a spiritual counterforce. Apart from these 4 castes, there is still a 5th category of people called Khandala, the lowest one, regarded by the other castes as untouchables who are mistreated and exploited. First, Brahmin, one who observes ascetic practices. They created so many legends to strengthen and consolidate their powers. According to the Vedics, Brahmins were traditionally the custodians, interpreters, and teachers of religious knowledge, and as priests, acted as intermediaries between humans, the world, and God. They were expected to maintain pure conduct and observe dietary rules, e.g. vegetarianism, abstinence from alcohol, etc. The Indians believe that Brahman, born from the mouth of Brahma or Lord of the Heavens, Kshatriya, born from the shoulders of Brahma, Vaisya, born from the flanks of Brahma, and the Sudra, born from the feet of Brahma. The leading drawback of caste-based system was that Brahmins could not learn military, administration and trade, nor could they take to farming. Similarly, the Kshatriyas had also to depend on people of other caste. The Vaishyas could also not acquire expertise of knowledge, trade and agriculture. The Shudras were also deprived of the privileges enjoyed by the 3 castes. The Buddha opposed the domination of Brahmins' domination because this caste virtually had completed control over other castes. Their profession was hereditary, and they were considered specialists in sacrifices and rituals which could only be performed by the Brahmins. Hence, they were held in high esteem by all other castes due to their superior spiritual and intellectual capabilities, hence they commanded respect of all other castes. Brahmins were also the educators, teachers, religious leaders, and their role in society ranged from birth until death. At that time all the scriptures and treatises were available in Sanskrit language which was only known to the Brahmins, hence people of other castes were obliged to seek knowledge, education, rituals and sacrifices from them, due to their monopoly on performance and teachings. Second, the Kshatriya, which is a military and ruling class in India, born from the shoulders of Brahma. Chinese render it as landowners and royal caste, the caste from which the Buddha came forth. Ruling class. The warrior and ruling castes in India during Sakyamuni's time, a member of the military or reigning order. The second of the 4 Indian castes. The other castes were the Brahmanas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras, the priest caste, the merchants or workers, and the servants or slaves. At the time of the Buddha, the Aryan clause in India recognized 4 social grades called varnas, a color, the highest being the Brahmin or priest Baulamon. Next comes the Kshatriya, Satni Loyi, the warrior ruler, then the Vaishya or merchant, and lastly the Sudra or people of non-Aryan descent. As religious power and ritual observance were confined to the Brahmins alone, the Kshatriyas wielded control and influence on military and general administration. They were warriors and leaders, so military and political power gathered in their hands. Thus, they became the hereditary rulers and lineage passed from one generation to another. The third class is the Vaisya or traders and landlords. Vaisya, born from the flanks of Brahma. The Vaishyas were a class of traders, merchants and businessmen who controlled business activities in the society. This caste possessed wealth, and their activities also passed on from one generation to another. The fourth class is the Sudra. Farmers and serfs, born from the feet of Brahma. Shudras were entrusted the work of tilling the land, sowing the seeds, harvesting the crops and planting trees, vegetables, etc. According to those who believe in Hinduism, Shudras were not slaves, they were the servants of the society. No matter what they say, until now, Shudras are still the poorest caste in India. According to most Venerable Piyudasi in the Buddha's ancient path, caste, rank, color and even wealth and power cannot necessarily make a man a person of value to world. Only his character makes a man great and worthy of honor. It is character that illumines wisdom. According to the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught, radiant is the mind at birth, it is polluted only by defilements from without. It is indeed hard to curb the impulses and control evil inclinations, to give up what lures and holds us in slavery, and to exorcise the evil spirits that haunt the human heart in the shape of unwholesome thoughts. These thoughts are the manifestations of lust, hate and delusion, the threefold army of death, which cannot be routed until one has attained real purity by constant training of the mind. Buddhism is a revolutionary that believed in the elimination of the caste system. The Buddha taught, one does not become of any caste, whether untouchable, the lowest, or Brahmana, the highest, by birth, but by deeds. By deeds one becomes an outcast, and by deeds one becomes a Brahmana. According to Buddhist legends, one day, Ananda passed by a well, was thirsty and asked a girl of pariah caste to give him some water. She said she was of such low caste that he would become contaminated by taking water from her hand. But Ananda replied, I ask not for caste but for water. The girl was so glad, so she gave him water to drink. The Buddha blessed her for it. In the Vaisala Sutra, Sapaka reached the highest fame, that many Kshatriyas and Brahmanas came to serve him, and that after death he was born in the Brahma world, while there are many Brahmanas who for their evil deeds are born in hell. In the Dharmapada Sutra, the Buddha taught, strive hard to cut off the stream of desires. O Brahman, knowing that all conditioned things will perish. O Brahman, you are a knower of the unmade nirvana. Dharmapada 383. Abiding in the two states of tranquility and insight, a Brahman is freed from all fetters and reaches the other shore. Dharmapada 384. There exists neither the hither nor the farther shore, nor both the hither and the farther shore. He who is undistressed and unbound, I call him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 385. He who is meditative, stainless and secluded, he who has done his duty and is free from afflictions, he who has attained the highest goal, I call him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 386. The sun shines in the day, at night shines the moon, the armor shines the warrior king, the Brahman is bright in his meditation. But the Buddha shines in glory ceaselessly day and night. Dharmapada 387. He who has discarded evil is called a Brahmana. He who lives in peace called a Sramana. He who gives up all impurities is called a Pabhajita, religious recluse. Dharmapada 388. One should not hurt a Brahmana, nor should a Brahmana let himself become angry on the one who hurt him, return evil for evil. Shame on him who strikes a Brahmana. More shame on him who let himself become angry, or who returns evil for evil. Dharmapada 389. Brahmana. This is no small advantage. He who refrains from the pleasures of the senses, where non-violence is practiced, suffering will cease. Dharmapada 390. He who does no evil in body, speech and mind, who has firmly controlled these three, I called him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 391. If from anyone one should understand the doctrine preached by the fully enlightened one should reverence him profoundly as a Brahmin worship before the ritual fire. Dharmapada 392. Not by matted hair, nor by family, nor by noble birth, one becomes a Brahmana. But he in whom there exists both truth and righteousness, he who practices truth and Dharma, he who makes himself holiness, I call him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 393. What will matted or shaved hair do? What is the use of garment of goatskin, or yellow saffron robe? What is the use of polishing the outside when the inside is full of passions? Dharmapada 394. The person who wears dust-heap robes, but who is lean and whose veins stand out, who meditates alone in the forest, I call him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 395. I do not call him a Brahmana merely because he is born of a Brahmin family or his mother is a Brahmin, nor do I call him who is wealthy a Brahmana. However, the poor man who is detached, I call him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 396. He who is fed or free, who trembles not, who is unshackable, goes beyond ties or free from all ties, I call him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 397. He who has cut the strap of hatred, the thong of craving, and the rope of heresies, who has thrown up the crossbar of ignorance, who is enlightened, I call him a Brahmana. Dharmapada 398. He who is never angry, who endures reproach, whose powerful army is tolerance, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 399. He who is never angry, but is dutiful and virtuous, free from craving, who is pure and restrained, who bears his final body, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 400. He who does not cling to sensual pleasures, like water on a lotus leaf, like a mustard seed on the point of a needle, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 401. He who realizes even here in this world the destruction of his sorrow, whose burden is ended and whose sufferings are over, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 402. He whose knowledge is deep and wisdom is profound, who knows right from wrong, who has reached the highest goal, realizes the truth, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 403. He who is not intimate either with householders or with the homeless ones, who wanders without an abode, who has no desires, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 404. He who does not use the rod to damage creatures, big or small, who neither harms nor kills, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 405. He who is friendly among the hostile, who is peaceful among the violent, who is unattached among the attached, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 406. He whose passion, hatred, pride and hypocrisy fall off like a mustard seed from the point of a needle, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 407. He whose speech is truthful, useful, free from harshness that is inoffensive, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 408. He who takes nothing that is not given, good or bad, long or short, small or great, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 409. He who, in this life or the next, has no desires and emancipated, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 410. He who has no longings, who is free from doubt through knowledge, who immerses himself in the deathless, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 411. He who has gone beyond the bondage of good and evil, who is pure and without grief, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 412. He who is desireless and spotless as the moon, who is pure, serene and unperturbed, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 413. He who has passed beyond the muddy road, the ocean of life, the delusion, and reaches the other shore, who is meditative, free from craving and doubts, free from attachment or clinging to a so-called nirvana, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 414. He who, in this very world, gives up sensual pleasures, wanders homeless, has renounced all desire for existence, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 415. He who, in this very life, gives up craving, wanders homeless, who destroys craving and becoming, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 416. He who is free from human ties and transcending celestial ties, who is completely delivered from all ties, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 417. He who gives up pleasurable and unpleasurable, who is cool and undefiled, who has conquered the three worlds, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 418. He who, in every way, knows the death and rebirth of beings, who is non-attached, happy and awakened, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 419. He whose ways are known to neither gods, nor Gandhava, nor men, who has exhausted his sins and become a saint, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 420. He who owns nothing, whether in the past, present and future, who is poor and attached to nothing, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 421. He who is brave like a bull, noble, wise, pure, the conqueror, the desireless, the cleanser of defilements, the enlightened, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 422. The sage who knows his former abodes, who sees the blissful and the woeful states, who has reached the end of births, who, with superior wisdom, who has perfected himself, who has completed all that needed to be done, I call him a Brahmana, Dharmapada 423. 563. 6 Dharmas of Naropa order. Tantric practices taught to Marpa Chogi Lodro by Naropa, 1016 to 1100, and brought to Tibet by him. These 6 methods are particularly important to the Kagyupa order. First, heat, Kandali, which involves increasing and channeling inner heat through visualizing fire and the sun in various places of the meditator's body. Second, illusory body, Mayudeha, a practice in which one mentally generates an image of a subtle body composed of subtle energies and endowed with the ideal qualities of a Buddha, such as the 6 paramitas. This is eventually transformed into the Vajra body, symbolizing the state of Buddhahood. Third, dream, Svapna, or dream yoga, that trains the meditator to take control of and manipulate the process of dreams. Fourth, clear light, Prabhasvara, or the yoga of a clear light, which is based on the tantric notion that the mind is of the nature of clear light. And this practice involves learning to perceive all appearances as manifestations of mind and as representing the interplay of luminosity and emptiness. Fifth, intermediate state, Antarabhava, or intermediate state yoga, that trains the meditator for the state between birth and death, in which one has a subtle body, which is subjected to disorienting and frightening sights, sounds, and other sensory phenomena. A person who is adept in this yoga is able to understand that these are all creations of mind, and this realization enables one to take control of the process, which is said to present numerous opportunities for meditative progress, if properly understood and handled. Sixth, transference of consciousness, Samkrama, a yoga that develops the ability to project one's consciousness into another body or to a Buddha land, Buddha etc., at the time of death. One who fully masters the technique can transmute the pure light of mind into the body of a Buddha at the time of death. 564. 20 kinds of unreality. According to the commentary of Abhisamayalamakara, there are 20 kinds of sunyata. First, the unreality of internal elements of existence. The first mode applies to physical facts, states such as feeling, volition, etc. Their nature is not described either as changing, akutastha, or totally undestroyable, avinasi, that is neither real nor unreal. This constitutes their sunyata relatively or unrelatively. Second, the unreality of external objects. This relates to external forms because all forms can be external only. The external form is taken in shape of sense organs such as eye, nose, etc. This is known as the unreality of external objects. Third, the unreality of both together, as in the sense organs or the body. Since all the dharmas are unreal and the basis of all the dharmas is also unreal, their knowledge of dharmas and bases is also unreal. Fourth, the unreality of the knowledge of unreality. This is an important mode of sunyata. The criticism that everything is relative, unreal may be thought to stand out as a view. When all things are rejected, the rejection itself could not be rejected. This rejection itself is as relative, unreal as the rejected. Fifth, the unreality of the great space. Hence we can say that space is notional. Our conception of it is relative to this distinction of directions east, west, etc., and also to the things resident in them. The sunyata of space is termed as great space because it has infinite expanse. Sixth, the unreality of the ultimate reality. By the unreality of the ultimate reality is meant the unreality of nirvana as a separate reality. Seventh, the unreality of the conditioned. This unreal and it is nothing in itself, it is neither permanent nor non-emergent. Eighth, the unreality of the unconditioned. The unconditioned can only be conceived in contradiction to the conditioned, it is neither brought out into being nor destroyed by any activity of ours. Ninth, the unreality of limitless. This mode of sunyata is with reference to our consciousness of the limit and the limitless. With regard to this unreality, T.R.V. Murty says that it might be thought that steering clear of the two extremes or ends of existentialism and nihilism, we are relying on a middle line of demarcation, and that thereby the middle or the limitless is nothing in itself, the middle position is no position at all, but a review of positions. 10th, the unreality of that which is beginningless and endless. This mode of sunyata is similar in character. It applies to distinctions in time such as beginning, the middle and the end. These distinctions are subjective. We can say that nothing stands out rigidly on the beginning, the middle and the end, the times flow into each other. Consequent on the rejection of the beginning, etc., the beginningless too turns out to be notional, and it should be recognized as relative or unreal on the account. 11th, the unreality of undeniable. When we reject anything as untenable, something else is kept aside as unrejectable, the undeniable, it might be thought. 12th, the unreality of the ultimate essence. All the things exist in themselves. Nobody causes them either to happen or to destroy them. The things are in themselves void, lack essential character of their own. There is no change in our notions not unreal. 13th, the unreality of all elements. This mode of sunyata only reiterates that all modes of being, phenomenal and nominal, lack essential reality, and so are unreal. 14th, the unreality of all definitions. In early Buddhism an attempt had been made to give a precise definition of entities, e.g., the impenetrability of matter, and apprehension of object of consciousness. This brings home to us that matter and other entities lack the essence attributed to them. All definition is of the nature of a distinction within general class, and is therefore nominal in character. 15th, the unreality of the past, the present and the future. The unreality or the purely nominal character of the past, the present and the future, is demonstrable by the consideration that in the past itself, there is no present and the future, and the vice versa, and yet without such relating the consciousness of the past, etc., does not arise. 16th, the unreality of relation or combination conceived as non-ends, non-empirical. All the elements of the phenomenal existence are dependent on each other and they are dependent, and they have no nature of their own. 17th, the unreality of the positive constituents of empirical existence. The 5 upadana skandhas, i.e., dukkha, samudaya, loka, drishti and bhava, do not stand for any objective reality. Their collection is a non-entity, as it is a grouping subjectively imposed upon them. This shows that corresponding to words and concepts there is no entity. 18th, the unreality of the non-empirical. The unconditioned conceived as the absence of the 5 groups is also unreal. Space, one of the unconditioned, is defined as non-obstruction. This is determined solely by the absence of the positive characters. The same is the case with nirvana, another unconditioned. 19th, the unreality of the self-being. This mode of sunyata emphasizes the nature of reality as something existing in itself. It may be stated that svabhava is here dialectically juxtaposed to sunyata. 20th, the unreality of dependent being. In this case also no external factor like the agent or his instruments play any part in making up its reality. 565. 25 forms of emptiness. In Pali Nikaya, first, the sunnata, in non-philosophic meaning, is as non-substantiality and the ideal of sunnata, that we should contemplate exactly what is negative or affirmative following its reality. Sunnata is also defined as anatta because of void of a self, and nothing belonging to a self, and it comes to exist by the cause of 12 nidanas. Finally, sunnata is considered as nibbana because nibbana is the state of final release. There are 25 modes of sunnata in Pali Nikaya: sunnasunam, samkarasunam, viparinamasunam, agasunam, laknasunam, vikambanasunam, tadangasunnam, samaketasunam, patibasadhisunam, nisaranasunam, ajatasunam, bahitasunam, dabhatasunam, sabhagasunam, visabhagasunam, isanasunam, paragahasunam, padalabhasunam, padavedhasunam, ikatasunam, nanatasunam, kantasunam, adhitanasunam, parayogahanasunam, and paramathasunam. 566. 7 kinds of emptiness. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha reminded Mahamati about emptiness as thus: "Listen, Mahamati, to what I tell you. The idea of sunyata belongs to the domain of imaginative contrivance, and as people are apt to cling to the terminology of this domain, we have the doctrines of sunyata, anitpada, advaya, and nisvabhava, i.e., with the view of freeing from the clinging. Briefly, there are 7 kinds of emptiness. First, the emptiness of appearance, lakshana. What is meant by emptiness of appearance? Existence is characterized by mutual dependence. Individuality and generality are empty when one is regarded apart from the other. When things are analyzed to the last degree, they are to be comprehended as not existent. There are, after all, no aspects of individuation, such as this, that, or both. There are no ultimate irreducible marks of differentiation. For this reason, it is said that self-appearance is empty. By this is meant that appearance is not a final fact. According to Zen Master D.T. Suzuki in Essays in Zen Buddhism, Book 3, in Xuan Chuang's version of the Mahaprajnaparamita, this is one of the 18 forms of emptiness. Lakshana is the intelligible aspect of each individual object. In some cases, lakshana is not distinguishable from primary nature, they are inseparably related. The nature of fire is intelligible through its heat, that of water through its coolness. The Buddhist monk finds his primary nature in his observance of the rules of morality, while the shaven head and patched robe are his characteristic appearance. The Prajnaparamita tells us that these outside, perceptible aspects of things are empty, because they are mere appearances resulting from various combinations of causes and conditions. Being relative, they have no reality. By the emptiness of self-aspect or self-character, svalakshana, therefore, is meant that each particular object has no permanent and irreducible characteristics to be known as its own. Second, the emptiness of self-substance, bhavasbhava. What is meant by emptiness of self-substance? It is because there is no birth of self-substance by itself. That is to say, individualization is the construction of our own mind. To think that there are in reality individual objects as such is an illusion. They have no self-substance, therefore, they are said to be empty. The unreality, or immateriality of substance, the mind-only theory, that all is mind or mental, a Mahayana doctrine. Corporeal entities are unreal, for they disintegrate. According to Zen Master D.T. Suzuki in Essays in Zen Buddhism, Book 3, in Xuan Chuang's version of the Mahaprajnaparamita, this is one of the 18 forms of emptiness. Svabhava means to be by itself, but there is no such being, it is also empty. Is then opposition of being and non-being real? No, it is also empty, because each term of the opposition is empty. Third, the emptiness of non-action, aprakarita. What is meant by emptiness of non-action? It means that harbored in all the skandhas there is, from the first, nirvana, which betrays no sign of activity. That is, their activities as perceived by our senses are not real, they are in their nature quiet and not doing. Therefore, we speak of non-acting of the skandhas, which is characterized as emptiness. Fourth, the emptiness of action, prakarita. What is meant by the emptiness of action? It means that the skandhas are free of selfhood and all that belongs to selfhood, and that whatever activities are manifested by them are due to the combination of causes and conditions. That is, they are not by themselves independent creating agencies, they have nothing which they can claim as belonging to their self, and their karmic activities are generated by the conjunction of many causes or accidents. For which reason there is what we designate the emptiness of action. Fifth, the emptiness of the unnameability, sarvadharma. What is meant by the emptiness of the unnameability, kong vi nuik goi itin, of all things? As this existence is dependent upon our imaginative contrivance, there is no self-substance in it, which can be named and described by the phraseology of our relative knowledge. This unnameability is designated here as a form of emptiness. Sixth, the emptiness of the highest degree, by which is meant ultimate reality or supreme wisdom, paramartra. What is meant by great emptiness of ultimate reality, which is supreme wisdom? When the supreme wisdom is realized in our inner consciousness, it will then be found that all the theories, wrong ideas, and all the traces of beginningless memory are altogether wiped out and perfectly empty. This is another form of emptiness. Seventh, the emptiness of reciprocity, itaratara. What is meant by emptiness of reciprocity? When whatever quality possessed by one thing is lacking in another, this absence is designated as emptiness. For instance, in the house of Srigalamatri there are no elephants, no cattle, no sheep, etc., and I call this house empty. This does not mean that there are no bhikshus here. The bhikshus are bhikshus, the house is the house, each retaining its own characteristics. As to elephants, horses, cattle, etc., they will be found where they properly belong, only they are absent in a place which is properly occupied by somebody else. In this manner, each object has its special features by which it is distinguished from another, as they are not found in the latter. This absence is called emptiness of reciprocity. 567. Wandering on foot monk. According to Japanese Buddhist tradition, wandering on foot monk is a monk who wanders on foot without residing at any places. This is the pilgrimage of a young Zen novice who has completed the first phase of his training in a provincial temple to a Zen monastery, where he hopes to be accepted and receive training under a Zen master. Everywhere he went he is welcomed with respect. Even though he wears ragged clothes and eats only the simple food he could beg, but he is respected wherever he comes. In Japan, this is usually a pilgrimage to a distant monastery, often through trackless terrain and with peril. It was regarded as an opportunity for the novice to put his physical strength of character to the test, to develop presence of mind by overcoming unforeseen dangers, and, by meeting many different kinds of people in joyful as well as adverse circumstances, to ripen inwardly. In the prescribed equipage of a novice is a round straw hat with a very low brim. This directs the gaze of the pilgrim onto the path before him. It also prevents him from looking around, which would not be conducive to the mental concentration he is supposed to maintain during the entire pilgrimage. A black cloak, white woolen socks, and a straw sandals are also part of his outfit. On his chest, the monk carries a bundle with his summer and winter robes, his eating and begging bowls, a razor for shaving his head, and some sutra texts. On his back, he carries a rolled-up straw rain cloak. When the monk has come through all the difficulties of the pilgrimage and arrived at the monastery, he is often refused in order to test the earnestness of his desire for spiritual training. If, after days of persistence outside the monastery, not rarely in rain and snow, or in the entrance hall of the monastery, he is finally let in, then he must provide a further proof of his seriousness through a week of sitting in a solitary cell under the most austere conditions before he is finally accepted into the monastic community. 568. Buddhism and other theories. First, Buddhism with eschatological questions. In Buddhism, there are no ordinary eschatological questions because all beings are in the eternal flux of becoming. One should note, however, that birth incurs death, and death again incurs birth. Birth and death are two inevitable phenomena of the cycle of life which ever repeats its course. The end of self-creation is simply the realization of the life ideal, that is, the undoing of all life conditions, in other words, the attainment of perfect freedom, never more to be conditioned by causation in space-time. Nirvana is the state of perfect freedom. Second, the concept of homosexuality. Homosexuality means having sexual intercourse with the same sex. There is a wide range of opinions regarding homosexuality in various Buddhist groups. Buddhists do not encourage homosexuality, but in general, Buddhists are very tolerant towards all people. People aren't to be judged or discriminated against if they are gay. Third, Buddhism is not culture-bound. It is not restricted to any particular society or race. In the contrary, it moves easily from one culture context to another because its emphasis is on internal practice rather than external forms of religious behavior. According to Dr. Peter Della Santina in the Tree of Enlightenment, the most important thing in Buddhism is that each practitioner develops his or her own mind, not on how he dresses, the kind of food he eats, the way he wears his hair, and so forth. 569. Buddhist festivals. Records of the Ilri Buddhist monastic order indicate that festivals were discouraged, although there were numerous regularly held ceremonies, such as the fortnight recitation of the Vinaya rules in the Pasadha ceremony. As it became a religion with significant numbers of lay followers, however, regular festivals were developed. In contemporary Buddhism, there are numerous yearly and seasonal festivals, which serve a variety of functions, such as marking important occurrences like the New Year or the harvest. Others provide opportunities for merit-making, such as the robe residence ceremony, Kadina, held annually in both Theravada and Mahayana traditions, or the Tibetan Monlam Chenmo festival. Buddhist festivals also serve the important function of promoting Buddhism to non-Buddhists, and they punctuate the year with religiously significant events. The most widely celebrated festival is the date commemorating the birth, awakening, and parinirvana of the Buddha. In Theravada countries, this is celebrated on the full moon day in May. It is called Vesak in Sri Lanka and Visakha Puja in Thailand. Other important Sri Lankan festivals include Posan, which commemorates the introduction of Buddhism to the island, and Asala Parahara, in which the Buddha's tooth relic is paraded through the streets of Kandy. In Mahayana traditions, such as in China, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, Tibet, and Vietnam, the Buddha's birthday festival is usually celebrated on April 8 or April 15. The Buddha's awakening festival is celebrated on December 8, and the Buddha's Nirvana festival is celebrated on February 15. Another important Japanese festival is Setsubin, early February, which centers on driving away evil spirits. Other important festivals in Mahayana Buddhism include an annual Hungry Ghost Prita festival, in which offerings are given to placate these unhappy spirits. Some important Buddhist festivals, such as the birthday of Buddha Sakyamuni on the 15th of the 4th month of lunar calendar, the festival of Hungry Ghosts or the Ulambana on the 15th of 7th month of lunar calendar, and the festival of the Buddha's Enlightenment date on the 15th of the 12th month of lunar calendar. Celebration days of some important Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Festivals on the first month of lunar calendar include the Maitreya Bodhisattva's birthday, the first day of the first month lunar calendar, and the Samadhi Light Buddha's birthday, the 6th of the first month lunar calendar. Festivals on the second month of lunar calendar include the 6th Patriarch's birthday, the 8th day of the second month lunar calendar, the Quan Sha Yin Bodhisattva's birthday, the 19th of the second month lunar calendar, and the Universal Worthy Bodhisattva's birthday, the 21st day of the second month lunar calendar. There is no festival on the third month of lunar calendar. Festival on the fourth month of lunar calendar include the Manjushri Bodhisattva's birthday, the fourth day of the fourth month lunar calendar, the birthday of Buddha Sakyamuni, the 15th of the fourth month of lunar calendar, and the Medicine King Bodhisattva's birthday, the 28th of the fourth month lunar calendar. There is no festival on the fifth month of lunar calendar. There is one festival on the sixth month of lunar calendar, the celebration of Quan Sha Yin Bodhisattva's enlightenment, the 13th of the sixth month, and the 19th of the sixth month lunar calendar. Festivals on the seventh month of lunar calendar include the rain retreat, which begins around the 15th of the fourth month and ends around the 15th of the seventh month of lunar calendar, the festival of Hungry Ghosts or the Ulambana on the 15th of seventh month of lunar calendar, Nagarjuna, Dragon Tree, Bodhisattva's birthday, the 24th day of the seventh month lunar calendar. Earth Store Bodhisattva's birthday, the 30th day of the seventh month lunar calendar, and Great Strength Bodhisattva's birthday, the 13th day of the seventh month lunar calendar. Festivals on the 8th month of lunar calendar include the 6th Patriarch's entering Nirvana Day, the 3rd day of the 8th month lunar calendar, and Dipankara Buddha, Burning Lamp Buddha of Antiquity's birthday, the 22nd of the 8th month lunar calendar. Festivals on the 9th month of lunar calendar include Festival of Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara on the 19th of the 9th month of lunar calendar, and Medicine Master Buddha's birthday, the 30th day of the 9th month lunar calendar. Festivals on the 10th month of lunar calendar, the celebration of Venerable First Patriarch Bodhidharma's birthday, the 5th day of the 10th month lunar calendar. There is one festival on the 11th month of lunar calendar, the celebration of Amitabha Buddha's birthday, Festival of Amitabha Buddha on 17th of the 11th month lunar calendar. Festivals on the 12th month of lunar calendar include Festival of the Buddha's Enlightenment date on 15th of the 12th month of lunar calendar, and Avadamsaka Bodhisattva's birthday, 29th day of the 12th month lunar calendar. Besides, there are 10 fast days. The 10 fast days of a month based on lunar calendar are 1, 8, 14, 15, 18, 23, 24, 28, 29, 30. Eating flesh, hunting, fishing, execution, etc. are forbidden in those days. These are also 10 Buddhas or Bodhisattvas connected with the 10 fast days. First, the day of Samadhi Buddha, which is on the first day. Second, the day of Medicine Master Buddha, which is on the 8th day. Third, the day of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, which is on the 14th day. Fourth, the day of Amitabha Buddha, which is on the 15th day. Fifth, the day of Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, which is on the 18th day. Sixth, the day of Mahasthama Prapta Bodhisattva, which is on the 23rd day. Seventh, the day of Ksitigarbha, Earth Storer Bodhisattva, which is on the 24th day. Eighth, the day of Vairocana Buddha, which is on the 28th day. Ninth, the day of Medicine King, Bisajya Buddha, which is on the 29th day. 10th, the day of Sakyamuni Buddha, which is on the 30th day. This is the end of this video. As you already know, Buddha emphasized the importance of generosity supporting the spread of the Dharma for spiritual growth. We can cultivate this virtue in our digital age. Now I need your help spreading the Buddha teaching further by subscribing, liking, and sharing our channel. You're supporting the dissemination of valuable teachings, much like this Sangha was supported in the past. Your engagement accumulates positive karma for you and helps make the Dharma accessible to a wider audience, a meritorious act indeed. Let's do this with pure intentions, free from attachment and selfishness, fostering a sense of community and supporting our own spiritual journey. These principles, rooted in Buddhist ethics, continue to guide us. You will receive great blessings for supporting the propagation of Buddha's teachings in a very simple way. By subscribing, liking, and sharing to help spreading the Buddha teaching to all human beings. Wishing you and your family always have a peaceful and happy life.